Good day to you. You know, here at East Stroudsburg University, there's a new residence hall going up. It's right behind me over there. Yeah, it's going up, and they're building it in the center of campus. Yeah, but you know, the area and the parts of the campus that are affected are not just that footprint over there, not just that footprint where the dorm is going up. There are lots of other things that are affected by that dorm going up. For example, that road is closed. That road is closed to wide vehicle traffic. You can still get through if you're a pedestrian, but if you want to drive a wide vehicle through there, you can't. So you got to find your way to get around things. Also, because that residence hall is going up, professors who are teaching in classrooms nearby with windows, they have to make sure that they're closed because of the noise from the construction site coming in. Also, with that new dorm going up, they're going to be taking another dorm, actually two dorms, offline. These are older dorms. They're known as Lenape Hall, and I can't remember the name of the other one, but we'll see it shortly in the background. They're going to take that offline. Those were more cost-effective dorms to live in, so now that means that students who are coming to ESU, who want to live on campus at ESU, they have more expensive options if they want to live in a dorm. Yeah, there's Lenape over there. You can see in the distance it actually has the radio antenna on it for WESS radio, which is East Stroudsburg University's radio station. And so I'm opening class today by describing these changes that are taking place at ESU, a university, because these changes indicate that what we have here is a system. A system is a set of interrelated parts where when one part is changed, it affects all the other parts in the system. And that's the way that we're going to look at media for the rest of this class. That's how my book is broken down. So as we take on this subject today, Chapter 3, Elements of a Media System, we're really setting up the framework for how we can handle the rest of the subject matter in the course. And so this chapter is all about understanding that framework, and then from here on out, starting with tomorrow, we're going to look at individual elements of a media system. And so a system, to summarize once again, it's a collection of interrelated parts that make up a whole. And these multiple parts are mutually influenced. One influences the other, and that other influences the one right back. That's what a mutual relationship is. And a media system draws on a wide range of resources to exist and function. So those resources include people, or human beings. It includes equipment. It includes utilities like electricity and natural gas. It includes script writers, actors, and all kinds of other resources that are required to put that system together. A system also has to respond to changes in order to survive. Here at ESU, if we don't build dorms that have suite-style living, that is, almost apartment-like dorms, or residence halls as they are called today, itself is a change, then you're going to stop having quote-unquote customers coming to ESU, or students, because they're going to select other universities where the housing is nicer. And so systems have to adapt to changes that are coming from the external environment if they want to survive. Now, media systems are no different from other sorts of systems, except that what we're talking about here are things that are related specifically to the media industry. And so we're going to be talking about those as elements of a media system. Elements are the basic building blocks, and the elements of a media system are going to be identified in a few moments here when I get to them. But the first one that I want to mention, the first element, I guess I should say, since I am now introducing the first element, is the most important element of all, and that is the element of media content. That's how most people come to understand media. They read a newspaper, they watch a film, they read a magazine, they look at a web page, they hear a song on the radio. That's the content. But behind the content, you have the other elements of the system. And those are the elements that we need to dig down deep to get to have a thorough understanding of what a media system is all about. But content is the most important element. It provides, if you want to look at it this way, a window to look at the other elements of the media system. So content is where we'll be building our discussion towards. It'll be our focal point, and it'll be the way that we look for the other elements to get a deeper understanding. Now, I do want to say that this chapter also returns to the concept of a rhetorical perspective. And that's because when we take a look at media systems, we're going to be comparing them, right? We're going to be comparing, for example, the financing, as I mentioned in an earlier class, of how media are financed in Mexico versus Sweden. Advertisements versus, for example, subscriptions. So when we take a look at those kinds of elements and compare them, we want to make sure that we're not saying that it's better in Mexico, or it's better in Sweden, or it's better in the US. It's just different. And that's what a rhetorical perspective is all about. It's trying to see how media content invites us to perceive of the media system. And when we arrive at our conclusions, we're not making judgments about one country being better or worse. We're just simply saying it's different. And this one is more this way and less the other way. That's the kind of level of analysis that we want to have. So now let's identify the rest of the elements as I turn the page of my lecture notes here. Starting with the first one that we're going to take a look at tomorrow, and that is cultural characteristics. Cultural characteristics, we'll be taking a look at it tomorrow. It's really perfect timing before we leave for Sweden, because I'll have a lot to say about Swedish culture. Because out of that element will grow the next element that we'll take on Monday, and that is philosophies for a media system. When you set up a media system in a country, it's not just let go with no rules or boundaries. A media system is set up to have a specific purpose. And it's usually designed by government, but also by business. And so we're going to talk about philosophies on Monday. Then after that, we're going to move to the next element of a media system, and that's called accessibility. And that refers to how easy is it to get to certain media content? Are there barriers? Do you have to be a certain age to watch certain content? Do you have to pay something as opposed to getting it for free? Do you have to have cable versus getting it over the airways? These are all ways of describing how accessibility to media can be blocked or can be facilitated, and that'll be the next element that we discuss. After that, we'll be moving on to financing. I've already mentioned that a couple times in this class. How are media paid for? I think you'll find some surprises when we get to Sweden, and you'll see some ways of paying for media that you don't see in the US. After financing, then we're going to be moving on to regulation of media, and that is, what are the rules that are set up by government and by business and by professional associations that say that media can or cannot publish, print, or broadcast certain content. That's what we're going to look at when we take a look at regulation. After regulation, we're heading into the media element of content. Even though we'll be studying content because it's our window on the other elements throughout the course, we're going to focus specifically on it in its own chapter in media content. And then after that, we're going to head into news reporting. News reporting is a specific kind of content. It's the way that you tell the health of a media system and the health of a country by looking at what is reported on in its news. And this will be a particular interest of us at Lund University, because you will be studying within the School of Journalism there. And our main facilitator for the course, Ola, is a professional journalist writing for the most well-respected newspaper in Sweden. And so we're going to take the opportunity of gaining from his expertise and learning specifically about Swedish journalism, which fits into this element of news reporting. After that, we're heading into the element of media imports and exports. That is, the degree to which a country sends its media to other parts of the world versus the degree to which a country brings in media from other countries. And here I think you'll find a lot of fascinating things that are different between Sweden and the United States. Then that leaves us with the final element that we'll be talking about, and that is media audiences. Media audiences are really what drive the production of media. If you don't have an audience for your media content, then that media content is not going to be produced. So we're going to look at the human being when we get to media audiences and see how human beings in Sweden use media differently from human beings in other countries around the world. Now, the last thing I want to talk about today is, in order to bring these different elements into a vivid visual depiction in your mind as we study them, I use the metaphor of a tree in my book. And you will see that that tree starts to play a part in the rest of the chapters as we go throughout each element to discuss it. Because the tree will bring a visual depiction of a media system and the elements. And so the cultural characteristics I liken to the ground beneath the tree. The ground full of the nutrients that supply the tree that eventually give it its color and its overall health. To get to that ground, you have to dig underneath it. So when we talk about cultural characteristic tomorrow, we'll be doing some kind of archaeological digging to understand cultural characteristics of Sweden. Next up, as far as the tree goes, are the roots of the tree, and I liken that to the philosophies of a media system. Those roots draw from the cultural characteristics to produce a philosophy for how the tree should grow, but also for how a media system should grow. Those two elements are underground. They take deeper digging to get to. They're not obvious when you look at media content. That's why we'll discuss them from a theoretical standpoint. Next up is the trunk. I liken the trunk of a tree to regulation of a media system. It's the base that gives the tree the direction and its overall shape, and it holds the tree up. It's the most sturdy part of the tree, as you can see behind me. Then we get into parts of the tree that are a little bit harder to see. The main branches I consider to be the accessibility of a tree. That is, where do those branches take the leaves to? And when we talk about accessibility of an HBO program, for example, on television, you've got to pay for that. So it's not that accessible. So we might say that an HBO program would be likened to a main branch of a tree that's carrying that leaf to a tall part of the tree up there that I can't really get to unless I make some effort to get to it, in the case of HBO, by paying for it. So accessibility are the larger branches. Then the smaller branches of the tree are the financing of a media system. And then after that we arrive at the leaves, which are the content of a media system. And just like when you look at a tree, the main thing you see is the leaves. That's sort of the first thing you see. You have to look harder to look at the trunk and the branches. It's the leaves that thrust themselves in front of you as the main portion of the tree that you see. Content is similarly the main part of a media system that you see. And so we liken leaves to content. And then news reporting refers to those leaves which are different in texture, in color, in shape. They are standout leaves of a tree that we liken to be the commentary within content, specifically though news content, which is saying something about the overall media system. And then we come to media imports and exports, and I liken that to the seeds of a tree. When a seed puts out seeds, they drop into the wind, animals carry them off, they go and they implant in other places and sprout up and form brand new media systems. So when we talk about seeds, we'll be talking about media imports and exports. And finally is the media audience, and that's the passer-by to a tree. That's somebody who walks by a tree. And if we're a fruit tree, or even if you're a person who likes to pick a leaf from a tree, you're taking a look at that tree, you're touching the tree, you're interacting with it, but you're only interacting with one part of that tree, which is brought to you by the branches. This could be likened to being free over-the-air broadcasting versus up there is cable broadcasting or satellite broadcasting or streaming on Netflix, something you have to pay for and you have to have other technologies to get to. So this then wraps up our Chapter 3, Elements of a Media System, and now we're ready to move on to cultural characteristics tomorrow before we head on out on our adventure to Sweden. Have a great day.